Hello, welcome back. I'd like to welcome Reverend Bruce Carter to the studio today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. So just to kind of start off with, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in Hartford, youngest of 5 siblings born to my parents. They were married for 68 years, Luther and Martha Carter.
Wow.
They had 5 kids in 6 years. So we were all
Okay. Back to back.
Yeah. And we were a close-knit, competitive family where my parents stressed education more than anything else and the love of family.
Mm-hmm.
We were raised in Hooterville, north of Hartford,
Okay.
just north of Tower Avenue.
Okay.
And as a child, I thought that all kids had 2-parent homes and lived in that little community, because that's where I was from. We had friends and family. We all raised together, played together, hung out together. And some of my oldest friends this very day are friends from my childhood. The longest friend, we're still tight, a lot of us. I was educated at Harvard schools until 7th grade. I went to Harvard Christian Academy, 8th grade, then Westminster after that. And but my family, we were mostly educated in Hartford public schools.
Mm-hmm.
And back then it was a little different. Our parents talked to teachers. There were conversations held.
Mm-hmm.
I remember once, I know I'm going past.
No, go. Do we like to hear stories?
I remember once I got the first teacher conference that was asked for by a teacher to my parents. And I was shaking in my boots. I was in kindergarten. And so my parents get to school and they said I was being disrespectful.
Mm.
And in my family, that word to an adult or a teacher was like a death sentence, or at least being a whipping sentence. Something's going to happen. So my mom couldn't believe it because we were not raised that way.
Right.
And she said, well, Bruce, I said, he's not like his siblings, like Wayne or Gina or Martin or David. My mother said, he's not them.
We're all different.
I raised my children to really think, to be different and be independent thinkers and be themselves. And just because he's not like them, he's not being disrespectful. Well, he said to me, he may have said that to you,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't mean that way.
Right.
And you can't lump my kids into one bracket, one big ball of Carter kids,
Right.
because they're all different. And but I was scared because, back in those days, your parents would talk to teachers and listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in places nowadays where a kid says, well, my teacher says so-and-so, and the parent goes off.
Right.
As opposed to conversation. And that's one of the problems we have in our country right now. People don't have conversations and talk about things.
That's because those devices have come into play.
We are a divided states of America. That's what we are.
I agree. I wish kids would communicate more.
Yeah.
Because I think that would solve a lot of problems.
Well, a lot of times kids cry out and adults don't listen.
Right.
And it's not always that the crying out is done in terms of their speaking. It's in terms of their activity, what they do. Sometimes the child shuts down, not because he wants to, because the pressures have gotten so great on them that they choose to pull back because they think no one's going to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
What adults don't realize is a child who has a past due paper is just as stressed as an adult with a past due mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
It's all relative.
Right.
And we have to take the time to listen to them and find what's going on in their minds and not judging or pushing to a side. They're just small human beings.
Mm-hmm. And they're still learning.
And you got adults who are fully grown and ain't learning.
Mm-hmm.
And they choose not to.
Right.
So if we take time to talk to kids, understand them, and listen, a lot of things might go away.
Right. Right.
Put ourselves in their shoes.
Because if we talk to kids, it would help them to talk to their peers.
Yes.
And that starts the conversation
Mm-hmm.
from adult to kids, kids to kids.
Yes.
It's super important. Well, you gave us your first little bit because what was it like growing up in the Carter home? I definitely know that respect was really important to your family. And what is your fondest childhood memory? How about that? Dinners.
We ate together. And
Mm-hmm.
in summertime, we ate not just dinner, but breakfast also.
Okay.
When I was in high school, I had Saturday classes. All of us went to the same high school except one, Westminster. And my brother Martin went to Weaver High.
Okay.
I remember as a child sitting down and having meals together.
Mm-hmm.
And we had all sat in our almost assigned seats, sat in the same seat all the time. I had to sit in the middle between my brothers, in the middle because I was the youngest.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get my own space. Not even the doggone car. I didn't get my own space. You know? I had to always sit in a certain spot, whatever. But I remember that because it meant something. We would talk about how our days were. We discussed situations.
Mm-hmm.
And going to adulthood, my parents' house became like soul food. On Sundays at the church, you could find 20 to 40 people in my parents' house eating dinner on any given Sunday. And I mean, sometimes folks weren't invited to just show up and come and grub. And it was kind of, to me, I wish we still had something like that. My mom passed away in 2017, my dad in 2013. And although some have tried to do things, they were the glue. Not just
that kept it together.
Not just our family, but I mean our extended family.
Yeah.
And you don't have those kind of connections any longer. And I miss that.
No, I agree.
I loved it.
Yeah. I agree with you on Sunday dinners and dinners in general. I think being in a busy, like for my family, for example, my daughters are always busy with activities. They don't get home until 8 o'clock at night, sometimes 9 o'clock. So I try at least once a week to make sure that we eat together as much as possible,
That's my parents stressed it so much during the summer months and we were younger because, like I said, we had Saturday classes in high school.
Oh, wow, okay.
And
was that voluntary or just that's how it was?
That's how it was.
Oh, okay.
And it's that way today at Westminster.
Right, because I forgot, Westminster does that. Some private schools do that Saturday class.
We had, and then because we were steeped in activities, I was looking, matter of fact, on July 10th and 11th is our all-school reunion. Because of the pandemic, they shut some stuff down, but we're having a big one. And we were talking to some of our classmates recently, and I was always on campus. I was a day student.
Right.
And as me and my brother David, my sister Gina, my brother Wayne for 3 years, then he was a boarder. We were always there because of a sports or choir or drama, road affair seminar, all kinds of groups we were involved in that kept us on campus. And our parents would drive over that doggone mountain for over a decade, with 4 kids. And I remember when my brother David got his license at the end of his sophomore year, his fourth form year, they call it. And my dad, when they came in, threw me a set of car keys. He said, I'm done driving up there.
Good.
He said, I'm done. So we began to
take that trip up the mountain.
Yeah, we knew we could drive it backwards.
Right, because you do it every single day, including Saturdays.
Yep.
All right, so we already talked about how many siblings you have and what you're the youngest. How do you think your siblings impacted your life overall, being the youngest?
There were times when it was a great blessing, and times when it was a great pain.
Best of both worlds.
Oh, yeah. The blessing comes from the fact that my sister Gina was the first black female at Westminster.
What year was that?
50 years ago.
So 50 years ago, she was the first black female. And how long was the school open to prior to that?
1881.
Wow.
So she's the first black female there.
Okay.
And she had been number one in her class since kindergarten. My brother Wayne got this award at Barber School in the last year being K through 8. He got the number one in the school award. We graduated from 8th grade.
Wow.
So here I'm the youngest, and I had to live up to
their standard.
All their accomplishments over those years. And sometimes it was a pain. But I had an advantage because as a child, before I got to grammar school, there were rules of our house. You would come home, take off your school clothes, put on your play clothes, minimum days you couldn't wear, and then you do homework. And so I would watch my siblings do homework. and they're doing reading or English or mathematics or history. So I'm there watching them. I'm not even in school. So I'm learning from them.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to kindergarten, they're saying see Spot run. I saw Spot run years before that. So I need something to do. And that's where I guess I got in trouble. But it was a blessing and a curse, because the blessing was that I learned from them. At the same time, I had to live up to them.
Yes, big feat to fulfill.
Oh my! And my brother Wayne was a pastor in Hartford for a number of years, preached all over the country, and I've seen thousands come to Christ because of him. And I've seen people's lives change. He's trained ministers, and on a very wide scale. My sister Gina, who was just ridiculous, she had issues. She would. My mom told the story of how she potty trained herself. Because she was just that stubborn. If her brother Wayne's on the big toilet, she had me do that same thing. Mm-hmm. And she went to Westminster, and she should have been the first black, it's called the head prefect, the head of the student council. Mm-hmm. But because she was not a boarder.
You can't be on the student council?
No, she became senior class president.
Okay.
She would have been the school president. And the headmaster, who has since retired, told her, like a month ago, that she had gotten the votes to be.
Wow.
So Westminster, then to Brown, then to Yale post-baccalaureate, then to Tufts Med School, MIT, Harvard, and now she's going to Duke Divinity School this fall. Yeah.
She hasn't stopped.
No. And she has lupus.
Wow. So she fights lupus and has accomplished all of those schools.
Yeah. And
wow.
still going. Brother Martin went to Weaver High School, and they thought he couldn't do anything out of Weaver. Went to Bucknell, broke track records and all this kind of madness. Then went to UConn Law School. Now, in high school, he went to Japan. In college, he went to Japan. In grad school, he went to Japan. He learned Japanese.
I was just going to ask if
he learned it in a matter of weeks. Could read it, write it, and speak it.
Wow.
And was a track star at Bucknell.
Wow.
And then David, he was like right ahead of me. He was 5'5.5" this very day, and could dunk. So he went to Westminster, then Brown, then he went to Yale Divinity School.
Wow.
So these are people I'm in the house with.
Yes.
Whose shadows I'm lurking around behind. Mm-hmm. And now I was blessed to get all their giftings and teachings, but sometimes I got tired of being,
the best of the best.
It drains you. Mm-hmm. To have to be always under a microscope. Mm-hmm. And then going into ministry, it just heightens all of that stuff.
Right.
Because if you're seen someplace that is considered not the place to be, or you shouldn't be, why are you here preaching? I'm like, why are you here?
Right.
But my parents always taught us how to deal with stress and issues and things like that. Every time as a child leaving the home, some kids have no idea what I'm talking about. My mom would give us 3 dimes and then say to us, remember who you are. The dimes were for a phone call, y'all, So you had pay phones back then. And remember who you are. And they would do that to instill within us not arrogant pride, but to know who we represent, what we're standing up for. And there are times when I've let them down. I've made mistakes and screwed up. Mm-hmm. No, I can't say mistakes. I jumped and messed them on purpose. I was never caught off guard by things I did wrong. Mm-hmm. I just chose incorrectly.
Right.
And I think one of the bigger problems with people today is folk don't choose to admit that. People say, I slipped. You didn't slip, you jumped. Mm-hmm. And so, I went through some stuff, but my parents were so loving and kind. They taught forgiveness. They taught us to take accountability and to love through stuff and keep pushing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I try to do today.
We're allowed to make mistakes. I think that's how we learn. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a challenge at this given time for people to just move past those mistakes. You're not getting judged, but judgment is so hard for kids to realize. You can make a mistake, move forward, and learn from it at the same time.
Well, part of it is, in today's systems, for our young people of color, once they get into the system, it's hard to get out of it. And once they get in there, they've been judged.
Right.
Well, they've been judged prior to getting there. I read an article once in the Hartford Reverend by a woman named Helen Ubinas. And she wrote in the article that the 06120 zip code was the worst zip code in the state of Connecticut and probably in the country. I read the article, and I wrote a letter back to her, an email back to her, talking about my neighborhood where I grew up in 06120, and that one guy named Judge Graham lived there on Tower Avenue, and then Kyle Anderson, who became a city council member, and also commissioner with the DCP, lived in that zip code. Terry McKinney, state trooper, retired down in Texas now. Cubby and Todd Martin particularly runs his own company down in Texas right now. His two kids went to Holy Cross and to Fresno State on sports scholarships, and he runs a company and has been a VP at an insurance company for the past 30 plus years. This is my zip code that people came from. So for her to say that, I took offense to it.
I would too.
Because you're talking about who we are and don't realize what has come out of our community. And it's still possible for greatness to come because it exists in Hartford. It exists in Connecticut. And one of the issues is people are judging folk before knowing them. And then even they mess up, don't take the time to pull them out, to build them up, to pick them up and help them get to the next level.
Right. I think in education, when a teacher asks, oh, where's that kid from? It doesn't matter where he's from. It doesn't matter where he's from. Why should it matter? He's a student in our school, and we are going to teach him the same way. Jack comes in, we're going to teach the next person the exact same way. So I never, ever judge someone from where they came from, because if not, you're always going to have a label on you.
It's designed that way. It's systematic, and that's the thing that people don't want to accept in this country. The USA was built on the backs of free labor, which made the country wealthy, and they never wanted to give up that free labor.
Right.
Now the 13th Amendment says it abolished slavery, but it's not abolished. It's just transitioned, except for imprisonment.
Right.
So if you're in prison, according to the Constitution, you're a slave.
Right.
And that's why the numbers of those enslaved are so great are of black folk and brown folk, because let's keep them under our feet. Let's keep them oppressed. Yeah. And I know folk don't want to hear this kind of stuff. They think it's but it really is PTSD.
Right.
Post-traumatic slave disorder. Because you had these great minds of the enslaved people who will come up with inventions to make their jobs easier. And then the slave master will come in and get a patent on that invention. The works that the enslaved people did, and then the slave master's families took those works and made themselves wealthier.
Right. And
so for centuries, they made money on the backs of our people and then on the minds of our people.
Right.
And so then where you're from, because if you're not part of this inner circle of the 1% to make your lives better, they try to oppress. No, they do oppress.
They do oppress day in and day out. I feel it every day, and my daughters feel it every day. And I just hope for one day it's not going to be like that, but I don't know how long that will take. So you already talked about how your family education was super important. We already heard the list of schools where all your family came out of. Where did you go to school?
Westminster and Tufts.
And Tufts, okay.
I also I took class in Northeastern and UConn for a season. I've been in school. And I was talking to a friend of mine down in Arkansas recently. I made the decision. My entire family have 3 barred robes. And I'm the one who doesn't have 3 bars. So I've got to do that to honor my parents.
You do.
Yeah, so I've taken classes at a bunch of places. I'm going to start putting them all together. And to work, my goal is a doctorate.
Nice.
Because my parents deserve that.
Absolutely.
My dad went to 3rd grade.
Okay. So your family clearly made up for just going to 3rd grade.
But my father was brilliant.
Okay.
He was the first black foreman at Colt Firearms. Because 1 year Colt was up for their biggest government contract ever. And the engineers put this whole thing together and used his division to try to work it out. And they were down there working on some parts, the pieces and everything. They couldn't figure it out. So they go back to the office. My dad said, "Let me see the pieces a little. Let me see them." He took them, made some machine adjustments, ran the pieces through, did it again, called the office. They came back down. They're like, Elsie, what did you do? This is what we need. Where are your notes? He says, "Up here."
Mm-hmm.
"You have any notes?" He said, "I got it up here."
So he knew.
He knew. And he did that for years.
Mm-hmm.
He worked at Coast for over 43 years.
Wow.
And and got a lot of folk jobs there too.
Mm-hmm.
My mom went to high school graduate, and she was offered a full ride to Bethune-Cookman in Florida,
Okay.
but she wanted to be a wife and mother.
Okay.
And they got married in June 30th, 1945. They got married and moved to Hartford in 1947.
Okay.
And she worked at the post office for 35 years. And I have a 35-year pin from the post office. I have one. Because she retired, she was carrying me. Which is, she started working there, she was carrying me.
Uh-huh.
And they had told her, now she was told by doctors that she would never work a full day in her life. She would never have children.
Mm-hmm.
That she was too sick to work, and that she's going to die young. She died 4 years ago. No, what was it?
2017.
Yeah, 2017, 5 years ago.
5 years ago. So she made it a lot further than what they said. and had plenty of kids.
When I was 5 years old, they sat us down and said, "Your mom's going to die. We can't help her." I was 5.
I don't know how that it's.
Well, I spent the next 5 to 7 years walking past her bedroom,
Checking.
see if she's breathing or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out we all did that. Wait for her chest to go up when she was sleeping. And I remember it was February 2017, February 1st, when she got sick. I said, "This is it."
Mm-hmm.
But now 5 years prior to that, they put my mom in hospice.
And she made it past hospice 5 years?
5 years prior, hospice care. My phone beeped. I looked at it on my phone. I called her. She's down in Tennessee. I said, where are you going? She says, "Ohio." I said, "For what?" "To see your brother. Then I'm coming to Connecticut to see you. We're going to go to Jersey." I said, "Shorty, they put you in hospice." He says, "And?"
I'm still going to live my life.
And she did for 5 more years.
Good. I feel like that, it is a death sentence being in hospice, but clearly she turned it around.
My mom's life was a death sentence.
Mm-hmm. And she made it past over and over and over
Triple
again.
bypass surgeries, all kinds of things. She's not going to live another day. We can't help her. I heard that all my life.
Mm-hmm.
So they would tell me something about my mother. I'm like this.
You're like, okay.
Whatever. Heard it all before.
Right,
Right.
But you knew when it was really the time.
I knew that.
Yeah, you
As
can
a matter
feel
of
it.
fact, I told my siblings what day she's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
I was day off.
Wow.
But that's another story. But yeah, my parents were just amazing people. My dad passed away. Over 3,000 people signed a guest book for his funeral.
Wow. He made an impact.
Oh, yeah.
That's intense. Yeah. So obviously we know, like I said, education was super important. And you talked about, because our next question is, did your parents have a formal education? We already went through where your dad made it to 3rd grade, mom made it to high school. So what was the formula that allowed your siblings to become such high achievers, your parents?
Parents. And my father, because he had little education formally, that hurt him most of his life.
Okay.
And it drove him to push us.
Mm-hmm.
And he did.
Right.
Not with an iron rod or anything, but it was part of the thought process.
It's important to have that motivation.
And you got 5 kids in sports, music, band, all kinds of activities. It was nothing to see my father in the stands, and at games, at recitals or plays. It was nothing. All of my friends called my dad Pop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was nothing to see. If they did not see my father or my mother, something was wrong.
Right.
They were supportive and made sure that we weren't rich, far from it. We were poor.
Mm-hmm.
You got 5 kids, you know. They had good jobs. You're still poor.
Mm-hmm.
Because our parents didn't deny us stuff.
Right.
They didn't spoil us.
And they fed everyone on Sundays on top of that.
During the week too. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we had in the kitchen 2 full-size fridges in the kitchen, and a freezer in the basement, full size, not a chest, a full size one.
Mm-hmm.
And we ate them in our house and home. Literally, we ate them like crazy. But they were always there.
Right.
They were present, and that was so important. And it made us. It made us loving.
I think love is the thing that right now a lot of kids just need a hug. They just need that love in order to feel better about themselves.
Now my dad could love you and jack you up too.
Best of both worlds again.
And,
you know, you're being held accountable.
I was held accountable, but it was I told my parents on numerous occasions that I thank God for letting me be born to them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I was grateful. I still am.
Mm-hmm. To this day.
Yep.
Because they gave you everything that you have now. Okay. So what were some of you already talked about this, so I guess we'll kind of skip over that. So you and your siblings were able to attend top schools, boarding schools, colleges. Did you ever feel any peer pressure not to pursue education at its highest level?
Oh, yes. White folk and black folk. We were younger. White folk, black folk call us white boy.
Because you were so successful?
We're doing well in school. Mm. I mean, it was strange, you know. We would be, because in 4th grade I went across town to school, to New Webster.
Okay.
Because the programs at Barber School weren't pushing us, and my mom would not let them skip me, my brother.
Okay.
Now, Gina had gone there before me and David. But, so we heard it all the time. We heard all kinds of craziness.
Mm-hmm.
But our parents talked us through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some times when the talking didn't help. You know, you had to,
right.
You know, you could, hands were thrown.
I know. Believe me, I got that growing up, and back then it was okay. Mm-hmm. Now, if you do anything, you're in the wrong.
But then the white folk, from 4th grade through high school, and life, there's always some people that did not want you to feel you belonged. Mm-hmm. And there were times when it ended in peace. Right. And there were times when hands were laid and not laid in the holy way. You know, and my dad always taught us, don't start a fight. Right. He always said, but there's no such thing as a fair fight. We couldn't jump anybody. Right. That didn't happen.
No.
But he taught us how to fight.
Right.
And defend ourselves.
I was just going to say, to defend yourself.
He taught us that. And we used it when we had to.
Sometimes you have to.
I remember after George Floyd got murdered, that became international news. I got phone calls from my high school friends of mine, a bunch of them, asking me, have I ever faced racism at Westminster? And I was like, you really want to know? I said, the question is not, did I? How often is it like it? I was
just going to say, how many times did it happen?
It's how often.
Right.
I said, because people would stick their head in the sand, you know, to ignore it and avoid it. I said, it was everywhere. Right. It was prevalent. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite teachers passed away a few years ago. His wife just passed away a couple months ago, last month. And, last week, oh my God. And so something happened on campus where I was involved in a skirmish with another student. He called me the N-word my senior year. And we've been friends, I thought, for all through high school. And I got him. I got him good. Mm-hmm. Now, it may sound real pretentious We were playing croquet on the senior lawn.
You can only say that if you went to Westminster. You can
We
only.
were playing croquet on the senior lawn. And when he called me that word, and I thought I didn't hear him clearly. But someone said, one of my friends said, I can't believe you said that. I said, okay, he said it. And so the croquet mallet made contact with his chest. And one guy came behind me trying to defend him, and I saw him come. I said, you take more step, you're next.
Right.
And he froze because they knew I wasn't playing. But my favorite teacher, the next morning, called me aside and said, Mr. Carter, I need a word, please. I was like, okay. Walked me off. He said, you're both day students. You park your cars behind the gymnasium. Run the same time each day. Don't you ever allow anyone to see you that upset in public. He said, if you must handle a problem,
Handle it
that's
somewhere
between
else.
you. I was like, I'm thinking like, wait a minute, did you say that? He says, I'm not condoning what you did. He was wrong, but so were you. You need to handle your situations in a better way.
Right.
But if it gets to that point, it's no one's business.
Nobody.
I was like, oh, shoot.
Yeah,
But
nobody's.
he was right. But I ain't gonna lie, it felt good.
Well, of course, because you got that anger out on him,
Lord,
you know? No, absolutely. I think nowadays, with fighting, I think fighting is your last resort.
It is.
You know, we can talk. Even if you have to argue, we can have a mediation, we can talk it out. But those cameras, as soon as those turn on, everyone wants to get even bigger than they were without the cameras, you know?
I couldn't have lived in today's society.
Me either.
Because now, cameras are on, I'm not doing anything. I'm just like, I'm having a can of bubbly here, sitting, talking to you.
Right, right.
I keep my circle small. And if I do something, man, it's not your business. So I try to do things out of the public eye anyway. I'm preaching one thing, I'm a basketball referee or something else, but I'm not trying to be out there and be seen or having cameras on when something goes down. If the stuff I did in college
Right.
were publicized,
Right, right. I was telling my friends, if we grew up with social media,
oh God,
I wouldn't have made it through high school. I definitely wouldn't have made it through high school.
you
So
never would have met me.
exactly. All right. So education at your highest level. How did you deal with your opposition? So like, did the kids in Hartford tease you about getting an education at a private school, or did you still keep your close friends in the neighborhood since you were a day student?
So on campus, I would get home sometimes at night from school around 10 at night. And had be on the bus or be out the house by 6:30. So during the school year, I didn't see my friends much in Hartford. Maybe on weekends at church on Sundays. But,
Okay.
But for the most part, I didn't see them. But summertime, it was different. We had very long Christmas break. Christmas, spring break, and summer were long. So I was able to keep in contact with some of those people in those times. I would go hang out, play a little ball, run, just chill and stuff. But it was different because I made a lot of friends in high school. Excuse me. And many of us are still tight today.
Okay.
One of my dearest friends lives in California. I met him first day on the bus at Westminster. And he and I remained, we're brothers. My mom passed away. We had a service in Tennessee and one in Hartford. He came to both services from LA. One year I was posting on Facebook. I was in my parents had a cookout I was doing for him. And it was a big one, like one of the anniversaries. And I'm in the driveway, grilling ribs. He comes walking down the driveway. I'm like, what are you doing here, Rob? He says, I came for the cookout. I'm like, dude, you flew. He says, man, it's a big one. I see mom and pop. And so I met him in high school, and we remained close. And even I'm a consultant in business, and I work with a lot of different organizations and people, and I connect folk. Most of my contacts have come from those high school experiences and those interactions.
Right.
So I remain close to a lot of my high school folk. And it's funny, some of the same people in high school who we didn't get along so well, we are a lot closer now than we ever were.
Right.
And you're a child in high school. And your brain's not even thinking clearly in a lot of areas. But we've had conversations over the years. We've talked about some stuff and where things went awry and mistakes were made and dumb things we did. So, and we fixed the things through conversation, communication, and maturation.
Super important. So, on the whole, is church meeting the needs of youth right now?
No.
Do you think? Why? Can you explain either why?
I can't say in a blanket statement no, but on a large part no, because the children, the Bible says, we must be all things to all people, and oftentimes, some churches or congregations are too afraid to talk about stuff
That need to get talked about.
For instance, you just tell a child, don't go have sex out there. Stop that. You little hot butt. Well, guess what? That's not your nephew. That's what you call him. You call him your nephew.
Right.
That's your son because they sent you down south to come back with that kid because they want to get you embarrassed for getting pregnant. You have to have conversations with them, let them know what's going on.
Educate them.
I mean, open and honest education. And I once told my church, I said, let me tell you something. I'm gonna say something gonna make y'all freak out a little bit. I said, but sin was fun. I said, yeah, sin. If it wasn't fun, I wouldn't have done it. There are things I did that were wrong that I enjoyed. There had to be a heart change that I was offending God when I was enjoying myself, and I had to think of my God relationship over my personal desires or things of that nature. But if you tell kids to tell them what they can't do, as opposed to having them build the right relationship with God, they're going to rebel.
Right.
And then you have to give them activities that will keep their minds developed or occupied.
Yeah.
When I was younger, they would tell folk, you can't go to movies, you can't dance, all this kind of stuff. What is Zumba?
It's a workout.
To music.
Right.
That's dancing, isn't it?
Right.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
And you see folk at weddings, so everybody at wedding dances. That's the only time of the year you can dance at someone's wedding celebration.
It makes no sense.
It doesn't make sense because we are taking things from them which are natural,
right,
and making it nasty.
We don't always have to do it that way.
No, we need to give. If you cannot give an alternative to enjoying life, they're going to find themselves,
and they're going to rebel.
Big time.
I'm with you on that. What are effective ministry programs that can be used to meet the needs of today's youth? So what do you think, like you just talked about that, what do you think like a major switch that would need to happen in order for it to actually work?
There's a church in Jacksonville, Florida, called the Potter's House. I went down there years ago, and I walked to the youth facility. They had TVs all around the room and game stations. I'm like, what the? I mean, it looked like a sports bar. And you go there after school hours, it'd be packed with kids. They have a Bible study, games, and chill.
It's a safe place.
Totally. When I grew up, we had night gym. Every school through Park and Rec had night activities for the folk from the neighborhood. We've got to get back some of those old ways. Yeah. To bring kids together. Make
it a fun place, but also an educational place.
Yes. It's something, and plus we had teachers there who we saw during the school year. We had folk who were athletes we saw and knew of. And then we had competition amongst neighborhoods.
That would be fun.
We played, I remember one year I was in Old Webster and we played Parkville one year over at our gym. This is before folk got too correct and everything. Everyone got a trophy for playing.
Everyone's a winner.
Oh, God. So we're playing Parkville, and at halftime, they hadn't scored a point. And our coach says to us, if you guys shut them out, you get a pizza party.
Food.
So we looked, and we shut them out.
And you got that pizza party.
74 to zip. My brother said 76. I think it was 4. I think I'm right. Shut them out.
Wow.
And I mean, if you did that today, we'd have been demonized.
Yeah, that was it recently. I think it was 124 to 8 or something in
Yeah,
Norwalk
it was
or
bad.
something.
It was bad. But we weren't on TV and social media. No one knew
Right,
who we were. We just
right.
beat them down, got a pizza party, have fun. The kids who played against, I don't know any of them. Gives my team, I know them. We still laugh about it.
Yeah.
But we had night gyms and had neighborhood pride.
Right.
We had and the opportunity to fellowship and camaraderie outside of the school. Nowadays, what do they have?
Nothing.
Not a doggone thing. There are no.
The only way you get involved is if your parents put you in it.
And that's AU basketball.
Right.
Or AU sports. That's
Which
different.
costs.
A lot of money.
So you're saying they don't have that. So like, I know there's the Boys and Girls Club, but who goes to the Boys and Girls Club? Parents that work send their kids there for like daycare. There's no like park and recs like it used to be.
No.
You have to have that.
And I'm sorry, the cities have an obligation for their children. I think they do. Taxpayer dollars should go someplace to help to bolster those programs. Now, I love the Boys and Girls Club. My friend is the president, Sam Gray, great man. I have a buddy at the Y, Harold Sparrow. He's the president and CEO of the Y at Hartford. And he's a great man. But most programs in this area, there are not Boys and Girls Clubs on every corner.
Right.
They're not. There's just not enough facilities for these kids to have a place to go and participate. And then it was, well, the church. Well, guess what? The church's primary responsibility is first to its members. That's first. And we evangelize and bring folk in. But believe it or not, most churches don't have the funds to do major things like that for their kids. They don't. Like, I love Mike Copeland and what he's done with basketball over the years. But it all costs money. Because Mike doesn't own a gym.
Right.
So he has to get a gym.
Right.
Then he has to pay people to run the gym. And it's work. So I think the city should take some responsibility to make sure there are programs in place so that kids don't feel neglected. And they feel wanted and part of
And they have a
something.
place to go. So like in Florida, they've made that place welcoming for kids to go there. So they know after school, instead of going and getting into trouble, they can go to church, play video games, but also take Bible class. Simple. It's the money that needs to go into those programs.
The best of all worlds.
For sure. I mean, gaming is super big now. So you preached over the funerals of youths who have died in the result of violence. We're getting a little bit more on the serious note. How can the city turn this trend of violence around? I know if we had those places, like I said, they're not going to be on the streets. But that's not the only thing to save everyone.
I've done some of the most troubling funerals you can imagine. I mean, from stillborns to folk over 100 years old. But also, I've done some gang shootings, rapes and murders. I've done these kind of services with people. Now, in the gang situations, I wouldn't say at the funeral. I said, I could tell you right now how to stop all this gangland killing. I said, we had 15 kids die this year, under 21, from gang shootings. I said, every parent had a policy on their kid for $1 million. The insurance company would come here and shut it all down.
Right.
Insurance will say, we can't make 15 more black millionaire families. We'll stop this foolishness. But there's nothing at stake.
Right.
Turf. Most of the killings don't get solved. They're unsolved murders. Because the police figure, I mean, if the folk don't care about it, because they keep perpetuating it,
Right.
and then you have families crying, if there's not an epiphany, a change of who the person is, they'll remain who they were. In order to stop it, there has to be conscious conversations where we evangelize, reach out to people, not trying to condemn everybody, but our job should be to love the hell out of them.
Right.
We should have compassion, empathy, and sympathy to the point where we draw people. The Bible says, with loving kindness I'll draw you. So the only way to get people in is to go reach them and then love them into the fold.
I mean, I think empathy is something that a lot of kids are without, you know.
We have so many judgmental people. And one of the problems is now the parents are so young. And the first thing they say is, I gotta get my own way, you gotta get yours too. No. It's a parent's responsibility to bring that child up to a place of independence and nurturing. And there's some child matures slower than the other one.
Right.
You can't say at 18 you're out of here if that child at 18 is not ready to handle himself in the world. I don't care what it is. If they're not prepared, you got to spend more time to get that child prepared. Age does not mean maturity.
Right.
Age just means you have more birthdays.
Right.
That's all it means.
Right, because it's then again, it's going to have babies having babies. You know, we have to get past that. So as a basketball referee, kind of switching around, you've seen the best high school basketball players. Do you feel student athletes are more prepared to deal with the rigor of college, or do you think they're not ready? Do you think they're ready to move on from high school to college, being around the high schoolers?
Most kids have no idea what it means to make it in college, and college sports particularly. I have a friend of mine I was talking to last week about her daughter who is getting some looks now, and she told her mother, "I don't want to go Division I." I was like, "What?" She said, "It's too much work." She will probably get looked at by D1 schools. It's too much work. I'm not ready for that.
I promise you, I just had this conversation on Sunday at my daughter's soccer game. A friend of mine's daughter is a softball player, and she possibly could go D1, D2. She doesn't want to play softball at all in college because of the amount of work. So she's done and has been a star athlete and wants to stop as soon as she's done with high school.
And that's part of the problem with AAU now. You've got kids playing too much. And they're getting burned out.
Burned out.
They're losing love for the game because as an official, as a referee, I'm at games where parents are riding their kids, riding the referees, and I'm kind of blunt. I can be. And I've told parents, your kid sucks. He ain't going anywhere. I said to them, Lord forgive me. When you get to a point you just get tired of people riding you over dumb stuff, this is supposed to be a kid's game.
A kid's game. It's not the parents playing basketball.
You know, I had a parent want to smack a kid in the head during the game. He got tossed out of the gym, of course. You know, I've had people screaming, a little 8th grade girl, she's flopping, oh, kind of crap. I'm like, dude.
It's a game.
You sit down or watch from the parking lot.
Yep.
They're putting too much pressure on these kids and making promises that cannot be fulfilled. And then charging for those promises. You pay my program $1,000, I'll get your kid looked at into school. No. You get a kid looked at.
No promises.
You can't promise where these kids are going.
Yeah.
You know how many few kids get scholarships? How few go to pros?
Right.
In every sport?
Yeah.
And so I've seen it. There's in Georgia a few months ago, a ref got jumped on by parents and the team, a bunch of kids. I've been in gyms where people come out of the stands going after the referee.
Because they don't like the calls.
Not my watch. No, I'm sorry. No, we have a crew, we travel together, and we watch each other's back. It's sickening.
It's never that serious.
It's a game.
It's sports where every day that they're at that game, they are learning at that game to get better for the next one. So why are we as parents, there's nothing more that I can't stand when I'm watching my daughters play sports when parents argue in the stands. Why are you arguing? These are kids playing sports and they're supposed to be learning every day and having fun at the same time.
And I look at today's society, I'm going to say this, and I got in trouble saying it in church before, too. I said, I'm tired of fat black folk. I said that. And at the time, I was one of them. I was like, I couldn't see my feet. I looked down, my feet weren't there. Because because the gut was so far out, it's covered everything up. But we've lost the ability to be in shape or the thought process. Church still, they tell folks you can't dance, so folks stop dancing, so folks get fat meat. After church, you get chicken. You know, service is over. You try to find a new club, this restaurant, and get your macaroni and cheese. You want that carbs, want that chicken, cornbread, and the church punch, which is like diabetes in a glass.
Right. There's never enough sugar.
Oh my! It's pre-sweetened. No, it ain't. Any more sugar. So you do that, but then you look up in the congregation and you have a place of obesity across the board. When I was a child, we played outside.
Yep.
Now, when the lights came on, better be inside.
Right.
We went to the park. We played in the street. We had fun.
Right.
Nowadays, the kids don't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And parents don't encourage it. They got the kid an iPad over here or a game over here.
Because it keeps them quiet.
And they're out their hair.
Yep.
But at the same time, they're not learning social skills.
Right, which is why we end up with kids fighting.
They're not learning how to communicate, because how to mediate, have a conflict on the court.
Right.
I had a friend once named Vernon McDougal. Vernon was the funniest dude in the world. Vernon, but he could dribble a basketball like no one's business. So Vernon's just eating this dude up on the court, just shaking him. Dude from the Ville, still Villas, the Ville can't, we Hooterville, we punks. Vernon's shaking this dude, and the dude got mad when the fight Vernon.
For what?
Because he embarrassed him. And so Vernon wasn't a fighter. What? He liked to fight. It wasn't him. So Vernon started ranking him, telling jokes. And it was so bad, his boys in the Ville pulled him back. No, man, you can't fight him, man. You can't fight him.
It's not worth it.
But we learned how to handle stuff in different ways.
Yeah.
Defense mechanisms that worked. But nowadays, these kids don't know how to deal with problems or to work through problems because they don't face them like that. You got people on games where they'll get, I forgot what it's called, but they'll get the cops come to your house to jack you.
Like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, but they didn't have a cop show because what in the world is going on here?
Yeah, it's a world that we never grew up in, and now it's changing. So, like I said, if we had that church that had all those activities, you bring those mentors in, you bring them to learn how to communicate, how to get out of problems by speaking. What were your mechanisms? What can I do instead of using my hands?
Well, I think going forward, either we'll learn from them, from what worked, or we'll keep going down this rabbit hole that's not making sense.
I don't want to keep going down the rabbit hole.
Neither do I.
I don't like it at all. So how do you think high schools can better meet the needs of student athletes?
I think high schools across the board make some changes in curriculum. Not just for athletes. I think that particularly in the schools where you have children of color, they need to change some of the courses they're taught. There needs to be classes in financial literacy.
We have been fighting for that for years.
Across the board. And that needs to start actually in kindergarten. How to save and calculate.
How to write a check.
All that stuff needs to be taught. And how to balance out. Teach them about credit. How it works for your benefit or against you.
Right.
So athletes, it's a different story because they have so much cash they can watch it themselves. But if you teach it, they'll have an understanding what's going on so they can't be taken advantage of.
Right.
There needs to be classes in conflict resolution and communication. And also, I believe in specialized education, not so much special education, specialized.
Right.
If it's specialized, what you'll do is you'll begin to build curriculum that work with your kids that you have.
You can meet the needs of the students.
And develop them as a person and not just a product.
Right.
And not just kick them to the curb because I know janitors who are millionaires because they went to that field knowing what they wanted to do.
Right.
You get trained and teach people to do things and not make it feel lesser because they're not white collar.
Right.
My blue collar friends, all that I have, that I grew up with, I'm mostly retired now.
Right.
And I'm still working.
So if it was taught at a younger age, I think we would be able to make it a little bit further.
Yes.
I agree. I think geometry isn't for everybody. Algebra is not for everybody. And when you give that alternate education, it's going to help those kids thrive.
Yes.
So AAU basketball has become a big part of the basketball culture. Do you think that's a good or a bad thing?
I can't say it like I want to because I have a tournament Friday, Saturday, and this weekend for AAU.
So should we talk next week and answer
No,
this question?
no, I mean, AAU gives me gas. I'll put it that way.
The bubbles.
No, it angers me.
Angers.
It's at a point where there are coaches and programs raping parents. And they're not being developed properly or learning the game properly. Mm-hmm. But they're getting paid their money.
Right. I think that's with a lot of like programs now, even like lacrosse and other sports.
It's across the board.
Thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah.
It's $2,000 to sign my daughter up for the year for Premier Soccer.
There you go.
But you get your uniform with it.
Really? Look, give me a T-shirt. I'll draw the number on there. You know, I remember I had a friend in college. He was in California, high school rather. He's in California now. He said he went to Virginia Union. So a guy came to the gym one day, and he walked in the gym, had a mismatched socks, a nasty T-shirts and shorts, and he ate everybody up. Ate them up. He said, "Where you from, man?" "I'm from Connecticut." He said, "What part?" He said, "Hartford." "What is your name, man?" They call him Boo Boo Lee.
Boo Boo Lee.
Boo Boo Lee. It was Robert. Then they started calling him though the General, Robert E. Lee.
Oh God.
They started calling him the General Lee because he just schooled everybody. Mm-hmm. So guess what? All those uniforms you getting made up and everything ain't making you any better. Mm-hmm. Boo Boo Lee, he was like an idol of mine. He's still living, a great dude. Was school folk in them old ratty shorts because he came looking like a nobody.
Right.
When he left the gym, he knew he was somebody. So give me a team, I'll draw the numbers on the uniform, and we'll school folk and see what happens.
What is that, the Bad News Bears, right?
They were bad news first. They got better, but, you know.
True. Okay, so can AAU help a student athlete with average ability? You think like being in a program that produces some really strong athletes?
Well, there are some programs I like in AAU basketball particularly. I know some coaches that do amazing work. I had a game last weekend. I was at Springville College, and I had this one team called Hoops. For 2 games, I had them. And I told the coach, if I had a kid my age playing, my kid playing now, I'd have him coach him. Mm-hmm. I watched him bring the best out of his kids.
Okay.
They weren't trying to shoot threes like Steph Curry.
Yep.
They were playing defense, rebounding, and hustling.
Yep.
And they wiped teams up the whole weekend. There's one called Connecticut Aces program out of East Hartford. Their coach, Rob Doucette, great guy, loves the kids, works hard. It's a family-based kind of program. So there are some really good programs out there. But at the same time, you have some that are just in it for the money. And those are the ones, I do think the good coaches can take their kids and develop them and train them and make them better and prepare them for another level.
Yeah.
Because if you have a kid who's average, but has certain abilities, I coached like 9 years, and I had some kids. One passed away last year, man. It was sad, but he asked me when we were talking one day where he passed. He said, "Coach, you put me on your team." He says, "Why?" He said, "I was good at baseball." I know that. He said, "But I wasn't good at basketball. I was kind of slow, couldn't jump. But you chose me for your team, and I know you handpicked your whole team." His dad was a team sponsor. I said, "Well, dude, no, bump your dad. He sponsored because I chose you.
Right.
After I chose you, he came to me and said, we'll sponsor the team."
Right.
He went, no. He didn't come to me first and say, "I'm going to sponsor you, take my son." No, he didn't do that. I chose you because you're slow, couldn't jump, well, you could shoot. And I knew if we were behind a little bit,
He can help
I had
you.
two little white boys in my squad they couldn't run from here to the wall in less than a day. They were slow, but they had fast jumpers.
Okay.
If I was behind, put those
Hand
two
them
boys in,
off.
pow!
Yep.
Quick release, I got 3 points. I said, 'cause I knew what you could do. And I respected that, and I knew we needed that. And I could have chose other kids, but they weren't like you.
Right.
So I developed him in that area. I worked on him in that area. And it can happen, but you must take the time to develop them properly and to love them in it. No, my kids, I haven't coached a basketball game or a team in, close to 30 years.
Wow.
And the kids who see me now, no adults now, they got kids of their own. They don't call me Bruce, Reverend,
Call you
Pastor,
Coach.
Carter. To this very day, when the kid passed away, I went to his funeral. I went to his service. Went to a service in East Hartford. I walked in there. His dad was there. I hugged him. His brother, who never played for me. Hey, Coach Carter, how you doing? Because I was part of their lives, and it meant something to me to help make them better.
Right.
Even the average ones.
Right.
Even the ones who are less than average. If I chose you, I saw something in you, not just a player, but as a person.
Right.
You know, and that's what needs to happen nowadays. See a person,
Yeah.
a player.
And to coach, not to make money. Well, you can still make money, but you can also coach.
Oh, yeah.
So for the last question, what are 3 things you would like to see improve for Hartford's youth to improve for the near future? So 3 things.
Like I mentioned before, the activities, courses in literacy financially. I would like to see that because I think if you teach a child about money, it'll restructure the thought process on money. And I would really love to see folk who look like us
In the classroom. I know.
in place of authority across the board. To see someone, Stephen A. Smith said something one day on ESPN. He's that loud broadcaster on ESPN, talks a lot of junk.
Yes. I know who he is. They have all these memes with him now.
Oh yeah, looking like a weasel looking dude.
They did a skit for him on Saturday Night Live this past Saturday.
Really?
Yes, it's funny.
He's hilarious. He's a funny dude to look at.
Yeah.
I mean, this way he talks. But he said something one day, and he said, "All y'all kids try to be Kobe and LeBron. Y'all can't be Kobe and LeBron. You're not good enough to be Kobe and LeBron." He said, "But you could be me." I went to school. I played basketball, but I came out of college, went to journalism. I got a job. Said, I'm the American dream. I'm more attainable than being Kobe or LeBron. So we need people like role models that can still. You can be pro without being pro.
Right.
Young kid I know, loved basketball, loved the game. He was short, real short. I mean, like I'm like a little person short. But he was short. And he couldn't play. He couldn't make a team. But he loved the game. He became team manager. Did it in high school. Went to college. Became team manager. Got a scholarship.
To be a manager?
Yes. Well, yes. Because he was a manager.
Okay.
Kept stats. Did stuff for school. And now got an internship with the NBA. And now the kid works for the dog on the NBA.
Smart. You got to find your way.
So he's working in the NBA, and these kids who want to go pro
Are not pro.
far from it. There are ways to do things, and we need to have role models come back and talk to folk and show them. And then if we teach the skills, the kids can listen and learn. It's nothing wrong with being a janitor.
There isn't.
I have a friend who's a janitor who's a millionaire. There's nothing wrong with being the team manager.
Yep.
Because guess what? That kid goes to every game free around the country. You got to buy a ticket.
Yes.
If you can even get one.
Right.
There's nothing. I have a cousin that's an undertaker. He loves his job. He loves it. And not just because he's making good money. He loves making families feel good at those last moments.
It's important.
And there's not, you can do something else. Just don't focus your mind. And to tell folks, you can do anything you want to do. That's a lie.
Yeah.
You know, you be realistic with kids.
Right.
You know, you got a kid with a club foot, he ain't going pro on sports.
Right. Right.
Not
What
gonna
are
happen.
the options for everyone?
Find some and be honest about it.
Yep.
You know, it's
Not everyone has to go to college, but what is an alternative
Yes.
to have those options for
It's
you?
not made for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, help them out. I know folk who didn't go to college at all and are doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
But just don't be the point where you make them feel lesser because they didn't do.
Right, right. It's important. Well, thank you very much for being here today, Reverend Carter. We
Flapping my
appreciate
jaw
it.
off
It's
again.
okay. It's good. We like that. It's a podcast. We're supposed to have conversations. So thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
Yes, and we will continue this in the summertime. This is our last episode for the springtime. So yeah, you're our final guest. So thank you very much. All right. Whew. Thank you so much.